Hi, Keith. We are very honored to have you join us. So thank you very much. We have today Keith Hartsfield, who is the EVP and Chief Product Officer at iRobot. Keith joined iRobot in 2019 from HP, where he was the Vice President of their Mobility Product Division for many years. I am Lisa Chai, one of the members of the research team at ROBO Global. I am a data nut, tech geek, and have been living and breathing the technology investing space for many years now. And as many of you know, ROBO Global was the first to launch in 2013 a robotics and artificial intelligence focus index fund to provide investors around the world a way to capture the robotic revolution that we're witnessing today. We seek for companies with key leadership in the space with best-in-class technology, and iRobot clearly fits the bill for what we look for in our index members. We also recently launched a pure play artificial intelligence index fund with symbol THNQ, and iRobot is one of the index members in that strategy as well. So once again, thank you for your time, Keith. I look forward to learning more about your thoughts on where iRobot is heading and how your company is setting the path on how consumers can interact with truly intelligent devices for the home. So as I mentioned, ROBO Global is definitely ahead of our time, launching a robotics fund in 2013. And if you look at the history of iRobot, I was fascinated to learn that the company was founded in 1990 by 3 members of the MIT's Artificial Intelligence Lab. So that is a long history right there. So let's start with Roomba. You have a #1 position in autonomous vacuum system in the world. Can you tell us what is an autonomous robotic vacuum? What can it do today that's innovative, but also useful to your everyday consumer?
Sure. Well, first, thanks for having me, Lisa. I appreciate it. It's always fun to talk about our company. It's an amazing place. So we're a company that I'll say we masquerade as a floor care robotics company. I think we're probably more like a tech company. But the way that we design our products is really about studying the user's needs. And the good news is that everyone needs a clean floor. No matter who you are, your floor gets dirty. So there's a recurring job to be done. The way we approach that problem, and I'll say maybe where the innovation comes in, the issue or the challenge of dead reckoning is a complicated technical problem to solve. We've been doing it for a long time, so we've got some institutional knowledge there. The way we innovate is in, I'll say, how we interact with the users and achieve that clean floor that you're after. And depending on which period of time you look at, we've added different levels or different kinds of innovation around the experiences that we deliver. Whether it be adding in a clean base when we launched the i7 Plus and S9 Plus a few years ago. Now we're moving towards this iRobot Genius home intelligence platform, which is really about understanding how to interact with users, understanding something about them in the context of their home. And I'll say the way that we think about innovation is understanding the user's needs first, and then putting the technology to work against those needs in whatever they may be at some point in the future. So we try to take a long view on developing platforms to enable that. And it started with cleaning the floor and then making a map. So now we have some spatial awareness in your home. I think of the robot as really a roving sensor and actuator hub that understands you in the context of your home. And then there's a lot of things that could lead to in the future.
Mm-hmm. The Genius Home Intelligence Platform, by the way, I love the name, the Genius Platform. How is that different from the previous generation?
So what we really did is, as we focused on the needs, we realized that people care how we do what we do. I think in the beginning we thought autonomy was the right end game target. And somewhere along the way, we started paying attention to the user's inputs, and we sort of figured out that, if you had an autonomous teenager cleaning your home, that's probably a bad deal. They're going to come and go as they please. They're going to clean how and when and where they want. And that's different than what you want as a homeowner, in your space. So what we want is that thoughtful intelligence, the collaboration where the robot can learn based on you in the context of your home, how to best do the job you want it to do. That was, I'll say, the gist of where we started. But the Genius platform brought in elements of AI and machine learning. So we have dirt sensors in the products. We know the dirtiest areas of your floor. We use that information. We have a lot of data from our fleet of robots. We've got, uh, nearly 7 million connected robots in the world today. So it's a lot of fleet data. So if I know where the most frequently dirty places are, I can use the VSLAM camera on the robot and I can start to identify those. And it turns out that they're couches, tables, and countertops. So one of the things that we did with the Genius platform is we started to put, automatically on your map, we'd make a suggestion. Hey, would you like us to add this table to your map? And you can say yes, which is much easier than sort of going into a map and drawing a square and setting it up manually. And then you can do things. We enabled a lot of voice capabilities with Google and Amazon. So, and we're leading out with them on some of the vocabulary and capabilities that are going into the platform. So we can say, hey, Alexa, tell Roomba to clean the kitchen table after I fed the kids and there's food everywhere around the table. Right. So we understood what the user's needs were. What they needed was a clean floor around the table because it just got dirty without having to go get a vacuum or set up, maybe if you're a tech enthusiast, you would go to the trouble of doing that. But most regular people won't do that. So understanding how to put the technology to work in a way that's meaningful for consumers was, I'll say, where we started. There's a lot to talk about with the Genius platform, but the other things are around automatic keep out zones. If the robot gets stuck, it'll say, hey, would you like me to set a keep out zone here around where you have cords on the floor? And you can say yes, and it'll just avoid the cords or the places where it might get stuck on the regular, right? With depending on the setup of the home. But by and large, it's all about putting the user at the center of our universe and less about the robot than about addressing the user's needs. That's a fundamental shift I think we've gone through, and we saw it begin with Genius 1.0, and you'll have 2.0, spring this year, and fall we'll have 3.0, and we'll keep, bringing out those digital innovations on top of our platforms.
Mm-hmm. Do you think in terms of sensing technologies that are out there, do we have all the necessary sensing kind of advanced sensors and all the kind of object recognition technologies out there? And it's really the software algorithms that we really need to kind of train on. What are some kind of missing pieces that we could sort of kind of look forward to?
Wow, there's a wonderland there. Today, we have a number of sensors. Think of the robot as a roving sensor and actuator hub. We have a big fleet of those and we can do interesting things. There's more sensors we could add to the robot, and then you'll see us start to explore things, but things like air quality, right? When you vacuum, you stir up dust. You might want to measure the air quality. You might want to clean the air. Things along those lines. I think there's other environmental sensors you could put in there. There certainly you can do a lot with a camera beyond recognize objects, but you can understand the user's context in their home. You could put temperature sensors, and microphones are interesting sensors too. It depends on what kind of models you want to build on top of the AI engine. But what we've tried to do in our premium robots, and most of like 60% of our robots in the fleet are premium that we sell from a revenue perspective. And there's a little more horsepower than you might need to actually make the robot go, but that was because we wanted to enable some of these future, I'll say modeling, ML or AI modeling opportunities, right?
Right. Earlier you indicated about having the Roomba have a little bit more of the thoughtful intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that your CEO, Colin, has mentioned a couple of times about how the consumer's ability to kind of control the robots, right?
Mm-hmm.
Could you go a little bit into that? What is a thoughtful intelligence? And what that philosophy that you guys have, how does that drive that user experience?
So I'll use an example, at least for me, that was a huge improvement. When we made the first connected robots, of course, we made an app. And the app was largely thought of as a remote control for the robot. So when you open the app, there was a giant clean button, just like there's a clean button on the robot. And the user, they'd push the clean button and it would do its thing. We pivoted that to be about the user. So now you see the map and you'll see the history of the missions that you've run and things like that. And we'll make suggestions to you. Hey, we noticed you clean every night at 8 o'clock. Would you like to set up a favorite? And you could always do scheduling before in the app, but it wasn't obvious. You had to go hunting for it, right? So we're trying to make those suggestions just like a person would, like a thoughtful, intelligent human would, to say, hey, would you like me to just come back at 8 o'clock and clean? There's other things we can do, along the lines of, well, we're on Zoom meetings, everyone's trapped in their homes. Wouldn't it be great if the Roomba didn't go off when I was in a Zoom meeting? Hopefully it doesn't go off now. Um, but there's opportunities to understand the context in the moment for the users and do things that are just a little bit smarter without having to program them, right? So even the stuff we do with the smart home integrations, we do a lot with the IFT platform. We've enabled and curated many of those experiences. But instead of having, maybe if you're a Radio Shack enthusiast, you'll go on our website and you'll write a macro for IFT and you can do cool stuff. Regular people don't do that. But if we say, would you like to clean when you're leaving the house? You can say yes. We can in the background understand that you have a smart lock. And when you lock the door or the garage door opener, or at some point in the future, maybe geofencing your phone, whatever, there's all kinds of opportunities to understand what's happening in the user's life and do something on their behalf that's just a little bit more convenient, just a little smarter. That's the idea behind the Genius platform.
No, that makes sense. I think near term, there's a big opportunity out there to kind of leverage the install base of the connected devices. It seems like your experience with HP and your experience at Green Edge Technology seems so valuable. You have you have that strong understanding of the ecosystem of how connected devices work. And iRobot knows a lot about how people use the bots. Is there a potential to kind of provide other valuable services in collaboration with other companies?
Absolutely. So we've got the largest fleet of robots. We've got a lot of data in our home knowledge cloud to understand how the people are using the robots. We have some idea if they're having good or bad experiences on a day-to-day basis, and we can provide those coaching and suggestions. But there's a ton of opportunities. So we have a map. Not very many people have mobility in the home, and certainly not at scale. So if we know the layout of your house, we can do things, or we could do things along the lines of when you set up a smart light, we could place it on a map for you. So that because we know where these wireless devices are in the home, we can figure that out with our technologies. So there's a lot of interesting opportunities. So whether it's on an ecosystem level, contextual or spatial awareness with a map, or whether it's how people are using devices, frequency and kinds of use cases that we can enable. There's a ton of opportunity. What I would say from an iRobot perspective, we have an interesting vantage point because we're in an awful lot of homes, yet the market is still very underpenetrated compared to, I don't know, cell phones or PCs, things like that. So there's a lot of runway to go innovate, and that's actually what makes it the most interesting. We've got a huge data set. We've got access to a lot of homes. We have a very strong brand with our consumers. And I would say that the amount of content that people send us of their pets riding around or that people are sort of enamored with robots is fascinating to me. Like there's a huge engagement that's very different than other consumer electronics categories. So I think we've got the access and the brand permission and maybe the right to play and right to lead in some of these spaces. But I don't think that we were likely to try and out Amazon with a voice assistant. We can enable those things and we can have the richest experiences with voice assistant because people like to communicate with voice. But that doesn't mean we have to make it all. So I think there's a balance in terms of how we think about the R&D and how we focus our efforts. We want to use our institutional knowledge on the stuff that we're uniquely good at and provide innovation on behalf of the users. But that doesn't mean we do it with blinders on with the rest of the world. We want to try and be smart about that. And we've got a lot of partnerships across several different industries on how to I'll say, fertilize for the future.
We haven't talked a lot about the Brava system. That's another device that I think is as important, but does not get much attention as the Roomba does. Can you talk a bit about Brava architecture? And do you see that really works very well in conjunction with the Roomba platform, or can it just work by itself?
Um, sure. There's a lot to talk about there. I mean, Brava's up 50% year on year. I mean, it's picking up momentum big time. So it's outpacing overall our growth. So that's good. I think there's a huge number of homes that have hard floors and enjoy that. It's on the same uh, technology platform as i7 and S9. So we were able to reuse parts of the technology. The basic mobility is different because you have wet floors and there's some, uh, I'll say physics, Newtonian physics challenges about how you navigate on a wet floor versus a dry floor, et cetera, with a vacuum. But we spent a lot of time around things like teaming. So, there are two-in-one devices out there. They're fairly compromised in the sense that the user has to go change the pad in the mission if they want to do both. What we put time and effort into is how do you provide the best mopping experience and the best vacuuming experience? And then how do you get them to work together seamlessly? So for instance, if you have an i7 Plus and a Brava M6, you can say, I want to, vacuum and then mop the kitchen. And it's just that easy. The Roomba heads out, picks up all the debris, and then the Brava heads out and cleans the floor. So there's a lot of opportunity, as we look forward to continue. But I think the Brava is a very important part of our very important part of our portfolio and our way forward. Because I think there's people that want vacuuming and mopping.
Right. I mean, the latest generation of the Brava looks amazing. I saw some of the pictures, and I remember the first generation Brava that came out looked
Mhm.
just, pre-average looking, kind of a mopping architecture, but this one looked very fancy. So I
Yep.
look forward to getting one day. I only have a Roomba at this point, so
Well, I would
uh,
tell you a few years ago, we took, I would say we took a design-led focus. So starting with studying the user's needs, and then we put the designers and the engineers and the product people in a room and we figure out how to make the great experiences. So part of that is the digital experiences that Genius Platform is, but there's a lot of the ID and UX and UI work that the design team leads out on to make sure that those experiences are great. We launched the i3 Plus last year. We got a ton of great feedback on the industrial design. The elements, and another example in the clean base, when it has a bag, so you don't have to shake out a bin and create a dust cloud right after you vacuumed. But the kind of thing that the design team would do is, when you pull the bag out of the clean base, it covers the opening in the bag. So it's a little thing, but it's those thoughtful design elements that we tried to focus on. You'll see that come on strong as you go forward with our portfolio. On the M6, we've got the button right on the front to eject the dirty pad off the bottom of the mop, so you don't have to touch the gross dirty pad, right? All of those little things, they weren't by accident. Like there's a thoughtful process that we've tried to instill from beginning to end. So understand the user's needs and then deliver really compelling experiences, physical and digital, across our portfolio and find ways for them to fit together and fit in with people's lives and their homes.
Yeah, it makes sense. So some would say that kind of vacuum cleaners is generally a tough business with low margins, and the big players have a lot of resources, right? Both in terms of capital and people. Why do you think that they haven't been able to dent your dominant position?
You know, I wasn't here for the whole ride when we built this momentum, but I will tell you, there are things about iRobot that are really unique, right? It starts with our founder, Colin, our CEO. The company exudes his sort of leadership style. It's very focused on doing the right thing for the consumers. And it's a hard technical problem. I mean, vacuuming floors doesn't sound hard, but doing it in an unknown area in an autonomous way is complicated to do well, to make sure that the evacuation of the clean base doesn't get clogged, et cetera, et cetera. So all this institutional knowledge we built up, I think, is very, very powerful for people. And when we start looking at our NPS scores, they typically increase with more use, right? So as we get robots out in the world, people use them, they like them. I think there's an element of As I mentioned earlier, people are sort of enamored with robots because they're moving around, they're doing stuff. People like the first few times they train the robot, they follow them around. The amount of user content that we get back of a Chihuahua riding around on a Roomba, like people love it and they share it all over social media. So there's something about the thing that we do and the way that we do it that people really like. So we've enjoyed a strong brand. I think we've made robust products that do the job well, and we're continuing to lead out against consumers' needs as opposed to just trying to add a few sort of shiny object like features to the
Mhm.
product. We want to always make sure that what we're doing is purposeful and done in a sort of graceful way on
Mhm.
behalf of our consumers. So that's the art in it. And I think that that's paid dividends over time. I can't take credit for all of it, but we're certainly leaning into that and making sure that it's across the physical and the digital and the whole consumer journey, quite frankly. You know, our care team does a lot, you know, to make sure that we're putting our consumers in the center of our world and doing right by them along the way. And that authenticity and consistency of how we think of and treat our customers, I think is important to
Mhm.
our customers.
I've heard Conan mention in the past that iRobot has the world's largest fleet of mobile sensors on par with Tesla. How does a company leverage such a huge amount of data?
So we've got, like I said, about 7 million robots in the field now, and that grows quarter by quarter all the time. And there's a lot of data that we gather from how the motors are working, how the rollers are working, how many missions, how many square feet, all those things that you'd want to know. We had a lot of really good forethought to, I'll say, instrumenting that home knowledge cloud. So there's a lot of ways we can use it. Some of the services that we're piloting now, the iRobot Select, where I can know before you need rollers that you need rollers, or before you need filters that you need a filter. So I can offer you a service model where those things just show up when you need them. I can understand how people are using the technologies. All those are really rich opportunities for us to pay attention to and bring back to the engineering teams so that we continue to build our knowledge and that we deliver on those graceful experiences. But I can tell you in reality, it's very important about how our robots work. When you say you want the robot to go clean the kitchen, it leaves the dock, cleans the kitchen, comes back to the base, cleans itself out, and it just happens like you wanted it to. Doing all of those things in sequence all the time is very, very hard. But all the institutional knowledge and I'll say focus on the little things
Mhm.
about always improving them a little bit. Having the data to do that is important, right? So
Mhm.
you'll see us expand on that as we go. That's a big part of how I think we can leverage our way forward with the Genius platform and continue to provide more and more innovation. It's hard to copy if you don't have all the data, right? You can guess, but it's like a machine learning model versus, you know, hard coding something. There's only
Mhm.
so many if this then that statements you can write in code, but if you train a machine learning model on millions of images, you're going
Mhm.
to get it right with high statistical confidence, right? Same idea that I think we can apply to our business models going forward.
Now it makes sense. Just broadly speaking, and this is not exclusive to iRobot per se, what are some exciting things that you're waiting for in the future of smart devices?
In the future of smart devices, I would say the market at large is still underpenetrated and highly fragmented. I would love just a modicum of normalization. And it's getting better. It is. It's better than it was in the beginning. Whether it's wireless interfaces or common APIs. And I think things like IFT have brought some amount of benefit there. But getting more penetration and building more familiarity with consumers is important. And I think a big part of doing that is removing the barrier to entry into the category. People are intimidated by technologies in many cases. So if you can demystify it and just turn it on and have it start to do something useful, that's where the magic can happen. So I'm craving that point where we get to sort of a tipping point at the consumer level where more people have them than don't, and that they use them. A lot of people buy stuff and don't use them. So getting to that point, and I think that comes with the kind of use cases we're trying to develop and enable with people, like the work with Amazon and Alexa. You know, hey Alexa, tell Roomba to clean the kitchen table. That's very human, compared to, hey, tell Roomba to run a mission or run mission 3 or clean room number 2 or, clean zone number 6. Like getting the human element and removing that barrier to entry, setup, use, and engagement eventually is where I think the real benefit is. So what I'm looking for is more partners that are doing consistent things. There's still a lot of complexity in that ecosystem. So there's opportunity there.
Right. And do you see that timeline being 5 years, for 10 years, or 15 years?
It will always feel too long to me. I don't know, honestly, if it's 5 or 10 years. I don't think it's longer than that. It might be shorter. It depends maybe on how successful we are. One of the things that I think we got a bit of a tailwind with, maybe the silver lining in the COVID situation,
Mhm.
at least for us, is, people are trapped in their houses. Many of them have children. And so a couple of things happen. First of all, your house gets dirtier and you're there to notice. Right. So we started studying what was happening, and people were canceling a lot of missions because the thing was turning on when they were usually gone. Right.
Hmm.
So there was a lot of learning in that, but there was an awful lot more engagement. So it provided us opportunities to provide useful suggestions and coaching to our users. Right. And I think we built, one more of those bonds to say, hey, we've got a credible, thoughtful intelligence that people start to appreciate. Right.
Mhm.
So I think, not that I'm at all wishing for more COVID, by the way, I'm ready for this to be over and the world can get back to normal. But I think there's those, when you see those things, I think they make a meaningful difference. And it's all about engagement with the technologies and delivering the right kind of experiences so people can engage with the technology.
Mhm. And so that you think the demand that you saw probably from the COVID-19 impact is probably a structural shift that may stick around a little longer than people think.
I think there's momentum in our market. I do. Look, it's really early days. The most penetrated market is roughly 12%. That's really low in terms of the number of people that have dirty floors, right? So there's tons of opportunity. What I liked about the momentum we saw in our business is we saw great growth. We also saw a significant, we saw the continued momentum in our premium lineup. So it
Mhm.
wasn't that people were looking for inexpensive stuff. They were looking for the right experience, which for me is like music to my ears because it reinforces the fact that what we're doing, I think, will continue to help us lead out in the market, and people will discover those bits of the sprinkles of magic that we provided in our innovation and product design.
Now that makes sense. Well, this has been really incredible opportunity to speak to you and gather your thoughts on iRobot and the future of smart devices. And thank you for your time today, Keith. Really appreciate it.
Likewise, thanks, Lisa.
Thank
Have a
you.
great day.
You too.